All right, let's talk about pricing your artwork. Most artists eventually want to start selling their work. They want it out in the world, on people's walls, not hidden away in boxes or stacked in their studio. So you got to come up with prices. There are a couple things I'll mention regarding prices. Number one is you don't ever want to lower your prices. Number two, you want your pricing to be consistent regardless of where the painting is being sold, whether it's in a gallery or on your website. Prices should be consistent. And then the third thing I'll mention is typically pricing is done by size. So like all your 11 by 14s will be one price and 16 by 20s will be one price. There are some exceptions to that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I'll start off with the first thing, which is you do not want to lower your prices. So what I would suggest is you come in low and then raise your prices gradually. So I'll give you an example of what I did. When I first started selling work, it was online, and I had a blog and I would post a daily painting. There was a lot of daily painters at the time, inspired by, I can't remember Dwayne Kaiser, I think his name was. And then there were a lot of second generation daily painters after that, most famous being probably Carol Marine. And so the idea was, this was back in 2005 I was doing this, and you'd paint like a little painting, 6x6, 5x7, something like that, every day. You'd post it on your blog with a link to an eBay, to where you could bid for the painting on eBay. And most of these painters were just starting the bidding at $100. And so I just thought, you know, once my work got to the point where I thought it looked good enough to sell and I was ready to do that, I thought, well, my paintings look as good as some of these others that are selling for $100. So I just placed the starting bid at $100. And so I just looked at the market. I looked, and I noticed that when I looked, I noticed that these people were actually selling their paintings at 100. And so it was like, all right, that was confirmation that I probably could sell the paintings too at that price. And I sold a lot of paintings that first year. I think I did it for 6 months, where I painted every day for 6 months, posted, and I sold, I think, about 85 paintings. And now most of them did not get bid up much past, I think the record was maybe $110, $111, like that. Usually there'd be either one, sometimes just be one person bid on it, sometimes two. And then maybe in the rare occasion there was like multiple bids, but like I said, it never went much more than 111, I think was the record, something like that. But anyway, but I looked at the market, I saw the paintings were selling that I felt like were, you know, mine were on par with, and then that's how I decided. Now, then I started after that, which was great, because selling will give you confidence, and it'll give you the confidence to approach galleries and feel like, look, I know my work sells. I put it out there and people like it and they bought it. So, so selling on your own is a great thing to do. Anyway, so then when I started selling in galleries, it was like, okay, how do I price my larger work? And so what I did was I looked at artists that I saw having success, painters who I kind of related to, that I thought, okay, their work is similar, but maybe they're just a little further down the road. They've been in the galleries for maybe, 3, 4 years, 5 years, something like that. So they're a little further along in the process than me, but I didn't feel like their work was that much more experienced than what I was doing. So anyway, I looked at their work and I kind of just took an average, and then I made my work half the price. So, for example, at the time, again, this would have been about 2007, 16 by 20s, I noticed for some of these artists were around $1,500. So I decided I'll just make mine $750. Now that's really cheap, and for a 16 by 20 framed. And some galleries would not even, they wouldn't be okay with that. But I was working with Studio Gallery, who works with a wide range, like really experienced artists and beginning artists. And they were totally cool with that, and we ended up selling a lot of work. I do remember there was a bit of a sting. Like, I look back at that now and I think, man, people got some really good paintings for cheap. And I still think that, like, you know, occasionally, even when you're coming up, you're going to have some good work. And so there's some paintings that I look back on and I think, wow, that was really cheap. Now for a 750, you know, obviously for a 16 by 20 at 750, actually, I think what I was selling was 20 by 20 cityscapes for, I think, 750. So I did $375 was my share of that. So not much. But, you know, the way I looked at it, it got me started, and the gallery was asking for more work, and then I bumped up the price, and I continued to bump it up to like now where my 16 by 20s are $1,600. Still not a lot, but still I, you know, sell a lot of paintings. You know, people are like, wow, these are, you know, within reach, these are reasonable. Now the thing is, you don't want it to be too low either. Now this is the next thing that I've seen, and this is something that's happened with online painting, and I think it's brought the whole market down. Because people don't have to show in galleries, or you know, there's so much available online. One thing I noticed was, speaking of, you know, daily painting, again, there's Daily Paintworks, which I participated in the beginning, and I haven't been to that site in ages, but I do remember I stopped participating because there were a lot of painters that were just posting, even painters that were like, that I'd heard of before, you know, when I was coming up, like plein air painters that were experienced and I'd seen, you know, in galleries and that sort of thing. They were on there selling paintings for like 9 by 12s for $100. And the problem was nobody was bidding on them. So, you know, and then there were other artists putting paintings on there for $1 or $5. And I was like, I got to get out of here because you can't be, anyway, I just felt like it was lowering. It just, prices were just dropping because you had this surge of all these painters. And like I said, some of these, you know, experienced painters offering their paintings, their larger paintings at cheap prices, and nobody was buying. That's not a good look. So I thought, all right, this is not viable anymore. I got to get out of here. So then I put most of my focus into galleries, and I was, you know, doing a lot of that. And then still selling on my own, but, you know, commanding, like, or just my agreement with galleries was I was not going to undersell, you know, and this leads into the next point, keeping your prices consistent. I kept my prices consistent, and I didn't ever undersell the galleries. So if somebody's going to buy a painting from me, it's going to cost the same amount as if they bought it from the gallery. So anyway, that's kind of how I came up with my prices, is just by looking at, you know, looking at what the market was bearing at a given time, and then, you know, kind of going in below that. Maybe going in at half the price was, you know, a little extreme. But again, in the beginning, having sales is a real confidence booster. And it just shows you that people want your work. Now, the thing that's interesting too is if people want your work and they're willing to pay $750 for it, there's a chance they're going to pay $1,000 or whatever. You know, so, but anyhow, so that's a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah, come in low and then raise your, you know, start raising your prices gradually. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was, you know, pricing regarding size. Most galleries will price, you know, like, you know, your 16 by 20s are a certain price, 20 by 20s are a certain price. There is an exception to that I've seen other artists do, and I do it myself now, which is like, say, a 14 by 14 to be $950, but if it has people in it, then it's $1,200. And the reason is it's just a lot more work to make sure that people come out correctly. It can take 3 times as much work. So that bump in price is actually not even, it's not much. So that's typically what I do. Figures, you know, are a little bit more expensive than landscapes and even cityscapes, even though cityscapes can take a lot more work as well. But I keep my landscapes and cityscapes the same price per size, and then figures are a little bit more. So anyway, that's kind of how I approach pricing. You know, if you're not working with galleries and you're just doing this for fun, you can do whatever you want, you know. I would say don't undervalue your work. A lot of artists do that, although I've seen artists that overvalue their work and sell nothing. So it all depends. Like, my attitude has always been, I'd rather be a little bit below market and have a lot of my work out in the world where people can see it. And as far as I'm concerned, I didn't get into this to make, you know, if I can just like keep going, you know, then I'm happy. And you know, as I've talked about in previous videos, you have to sell a lot of work if you're going to be a full-time painter and have that as your primary, you know, income. You've got to sell a lot of work. And so, you know, if your prices are too high and you're selling a piece here and there, now it's fine if you have another job. In fact, I do know there's a lot of times, like I've seen people like who go to galleries and I'll be like, 25,000, oh my God. But then they're like a teacher at a college. They can make their prices anything they want because they have another job. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have another income source, then you can jack your prices up as long as the galleries are okay with that. I mean, obviously sometimes galleries will be like, no, I'm sorry, that's, you know, we're not gonna be able to sell that. And then you're wasting their time. And they might have a good idea about what, you know, what sells and what they can sell at what price. Which leads to one other little caveat here. I was approached by a gallery at one point who wanted to do like a full color brochure and a book and with an interview and like all kinds of stuff. And they're like, we can get you 3 times as much for your paintings, which may have been true, but again, the problem of consistency. I was like, all right, but can I get that price at the galleries I work with currently? And can I get that price directly from clients myself? No. So, and I know painters that are in the situation where they worked with a gallery where things were going great and they were jacking up their price, and then the gallery went out of business or shut down. And again, you can't lower your prices. So now these painters are stuck with these above market prices and their work is not moving. They're not selling their paintings. And I've heard countless stories about that. So when this gallery approached me, I was kind of like, and this was several years ago, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, no, thanks. So yeah, I always feel like if I'm just below market and the demand is strong, you know, that's a confident place to be. So, and so far it's worked. So that's kind of how I approach it. Again, you got to kind of figure it out for yourself. That's one thing about the whole art world is, it's like you've got to be just as creative about marketing and getting your work sold as you do, you know, in creating your work. So there really are no rules, and if you can be creative in the way you sell your work, the way you market it, the way you present it, all that stuff, then that's a really good thing to do. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful in some way. If you got ideas about pricing your work or what you've done, put them in the comments down below. I'm sure people would love to read about read your thoughts on the subject. Anyway, it is the end of the month, so a shout out again to my Patreon supporters. If you want to help support the channel, there's a link in the description below. Other than that, thanks for hanging out, guys. I will see you in the next video.